Along most main streets in northern Minnesota, moose are thriving. From coffee shops to bars to stores, they're everywhere. But in the wild, moose face a firing line of factors that threaten to make them disappear. On a snowy day at the tip of Minnesota's Arrowhead,
there's a left and a right.
A research team with the Grand Portage Band prepares for an annual hunt. With snowshoes in tow, they load up several vehicles and drive to a remote location in the woods they call LZ, Landing Zone. This is a hunt for moose happening from the air. The guns loaded with tranquilizer darts rather than bullets. The goal, to collar rather than kill. From above, a crew of a pilot, vet, and gunners spot a moose. They get close enough and take a shot. Then, for head Grand Portage biologist Seth Moore, it's time to get on the ground and go.
Another small one.
Yeah, he went down quickly.
Good. Nice job.
Now that the moose is down, researchers have less than an hour to do a whole lot more than just put on a collar and collect a blood sample.
All right, I'm gonna go ahead and do the COVID swab. I just swab about 5 times. This animal's in good shape. I'm gonna do a biopsy on its other ear for a genetic analysis. Nice little bull, he's got 1 antler. I'm just gonna mount the collar right now.
If the process looks like a well-oiled machine, that's because this is moose number 170 for Moore and his team since 2010, when the problem became clear.
We really started focusing on what is causing the moose population decline, and then ultimately what can we do about it to reverse that trend.
According to the DNR, in 2006, there were roughly 9,000 moose in Minnesota. By 2013, the population plunged to an estimated 2,700, shocking state leaders and sending researchers scrambling to find answers.
It's concerning because moose are the primary subsistence species used by the Grand Portage Band. It's an iconic species of Minnesota. It's a keystone species of a healthy boreal forest ecosystem. It's absolutely a vital species.
Our intent comes from the background of us wanting to help. And moose are kind of losers on the landscape under a light or hat of climate change.
And this is what losing looks like.
This is hair loss from winter ticks. Here's a couple ticks right here, a whole bunch right in here. Here's some more.
Experts say shorter, milder winters have sent winter tick numbers soaring. In recent years, some moose are covered in thousands of them, causing the animals to focus more on itchy pests than nutrition in their calves.
We're treating half of our moose with tick medication and half don't get it. And we're seeing how controlling winter ticks on moose might affect their survival rates.
But ticks are just part of the problem. Milder winters and less snow have also helped the deer herd thrive and grow deep into moose country. That introduces another deadly pest.
Somewhere 25 to 35% of moose that die in a year are dying because of brainworm. It's a parasite transmitted by deer.
And where deer go, predators follow.
By collaring the calves, we've been able to determine that 80% of calves are preyed on by bears and wolves within the first 2 weeks of life.
Lessons learned from years of darting, studying, collaring,
The reversals are drawn.
and sending moose on their way. This was the first of 2 animals that joined the study on this February afternoon. The other darted a mile away. Moore taxied by chopper to an adult female who received the same treatment, and within a matter of minutes, she's free again. One last ride back to the landing zone and then on to Grand Portage headquarters to analyze the day's samples and start tracking the newly collared moose. Work the team hopes will ultimately shape future policy to protect and restore the herd.
We need to address the moose population decline quickly and aggressively. If we lack the societal will or the legislative will, I don't see how moose populations are going to recover.
All right, this is Forest Officer John Handrick. I am heading to interview Rob Obey, responsible party for the Stony Brook fire.
Okay, so 12. 12, go ahead. We arrived at Stony Brook.
This is what's left of an old golf cart Alborn Fire Chief Rob Obey and his family blew up on August 14th. The explosion so big it sent one of the wheels flying 180 feet.
How much tannerite did you guys use? Do you remember?
It's 30 pounds.
30 pounds? Okay. It must have been a pretty good boom, huh?
It was one of those go from a hero to a zero like that. Like, whoa. But it was kind of neat.
More than just the cart went flying that night.
But there was no one ball of fire, and I have a feeling it was probably the fuel tank or something.
So it was an old gas golf
This
cart?
one is a gas golf cart.
Okay.
The fireball landed in what the Obeys say was a swampy area. They thought it would go out. It didn't, and the flames started to spread.
And at that point, it was, run over and do the attempt on your own, right? And then you realize, nope, we need the big boys.
They called 911, having sparked what would grow to be the 30-acre Stony Brook fire. Over the next couple days, DNR crews joined local departments battling the flames, including Alborn, Grand Lake, and Industrial. Air Resources pitched in, working to stop the flames as they spread toward nearby canyon.
Very active fire in lowland ground, stagnant spruce for the most part, that was spreading.
In an interview with the DNR, Obey's wife, Kristen, appears to blame the rapid spread on a slow response from Alborn firefighters.
They didn't give Rob the resources he needed, literally sat there and did nothing, and refused to bring things down, refused to bring hoses and radios.
According to the incident detail report, the 911 call went out at 8:25. The department answered 1 minute later and had 2 trucks on the way by 8:31. They arrived at 8:37, just 12 minutes after that initial call.
In my estimation, it's not a miracle, but it's a slight miracle that it was actually kept as small as it was. With the strong southwest winds that we're experiencing, I mean, it could have been much larger.
Mm-hmm.
They got it under control, leaving blackened land and a big bill, more than $100,000 in suppression costs.
Such a dumb thing got to cause so much pain and suffering in the community.
Dale Larson is a lifelong Alborn resident, serving on the town board for the last 22 years. He says they had no idea their fire chief had started a wildfire until an anonymous complaint arrived in early September.
So disappointment was the first part, and the second thing is that he didn't come forward and tell anybody.
Larson says firefighter and EMT Stacy Kleiner found the complaint in her mailbox and brought it to community leaders. No one seems to know who wrote it, but a couple weeks later at a fire department oversight meeting, Kleiner was fired from the department.
My belief is that it was in retaliation for bringing that complaint forward.
According to meeting minutes, it was Chief Obey who made the motion to terminate Kleiner, while also recommending his own demotion. He and the other 2 members voted in favor.
Voting on your own discipline is kind of bizarre.
Christopher Simons took over as fire chief. He couldn't comment on Kleiner's firing, calling it a personnel issue, but says it was not related to the whistleblower complaint.
Coincidence of timing, maybe, but retribution, no.
Kleiner's termination was also a break in protocol. Typically, removing a member requires a 2/3 vote by the firefighters. The minutes show board members discussed following that protocol, but decided against it.
And personnel issues, once you don't follow them, for one, you don't follow them for anybody, so you might as well throw them away.
Simons was at that meeting and says if the fire department can't resolve an issue, it's on the oversight board to take action. But the Alborn firefighters never voted on Kleiner's termination, and she was not at the meeting to defend herself. Then, after firing her, the board asked her to stay on and train her replacement.
We're trying to minimize the damage that it caused to the department, so we're not just leaving a big gap.
Larson says Kleiner has retained a lawyer who advised her not to speak to the media.
I'd like to see her back on the fire department. I think that we're less safe without her.
Meanwhile, Obi is still an Alborn firefighter, responding to calls and collecting the annual stipend. Simon says he has confidence in the former chief.
He was taken out of the chief role. He was taken away from being able to be an officer. I'm not a fan of getting rid of anybody we don't have to.
The DNR cited Obi for careless and negligent acts, a $100 fine, and sent him a bill for $100,000, the cost of fighting the fire he started.
And after, 27 years on the department, and I've been chief for 17 or 18, I, clearly should have known better.
The flames of the Stony Brook fire long since extinguished, but the controversy sparked in this small Northland community continues to burn.
We have a little bunkhouse.
Way up north of Orr.
So this is the dock. The water's pretty low.
Douglas Yates proudly shows off his family's recently renovated cabin property.
And so this was a shed that was on the ground.
And the creativity and craftsmanship used to make it happen.
And we just lifted it up and kind of made a sauna out of it.
But after years of tinkering, repairing, and renovating, Yates has a new focus.
That looks burnt. And so it's like, okay, so there's forest fires here.
His need to protect it. So with evidence of past fires and a growing threat of new ones,
because everything you see is flammable,
he found a new use for that creativity and craftsmanship.
But I think we should try and make it rain. We'll fire it up, see what happens.
Using lake water, a pump, flagpole, and giant sprinkler head, Yates built his own fire suppression system, spraying water from 40 feet in the air.
I had the opportunity to really think about it for 3 years. And I just conducted thought experiments over and over again. Water goes up the pole and out the sprinkler. It does about 1 rotation every minute.
So when it comes to this property, you have a sauna, you have a couple of bunkhouses here, you also have the outhouse over there, and of course the cabin and the deck itself. In all, it's just shy of an acre, and the water suppression system covers every last bit of it.
They'll create what we like to refer to as a bubble of humidity around a structure.
Jeff Jackson has seen his fair share of suppression systems working fire prevention for the DNR.
If you have one of these systems and you get it on in time and you get the ground saturated, then when a fire does start to roll through, it'll just go right around your house and then keep going.
Problem is, most people don't have them because systems can cost $10,000 to even $30,000, requiring installation and regular maintenance. But by taking the time to build his own,
$2,000, $2,000.
Yates is able to protect his property without burning through his life savings.
Everyone should have one, especially considering climate change, and how prevalent fire is in our landscape now.
Northern Minnesota, these larger fires are here to stay, and all we can do is live within it.
When emergency strikes, you call 911 and wait for someone to show up. But how long you wait could mean the difference between life and death.
I don't think anyone really thinks that if I call, there's a chance nobody's going to show up, but it's not unrealistic.
Waiting is exactly what people in small communities are having to do more of. Cook, Minnesota has a population of 562. Like many emergency medical services in rural America, its ambulance is staffed with volunteers.
If that pager goes off, we just can't roll over and we have to go. It's one of our loved ones.
Karen Schultz is the interim director of Cook Area Ambulance Service. They have around 20 volunteers, a number not meeting the demand.
I mean, there's times in the schedule where we have maybe one person on. There's times in the schedule I don't have anybody on. It's sad. It really is.
The town of Marengo, Wisconsin is even smaller, population 392. Their ambulance service has 10 volunteers.
When the calls come in, we just hope that there's guys available. Oftentimes our day shifts are left open or uncovered. Sometimes we get the first page doesn't get fulfilled, they page out again.
Kurt Blakeman is Marengo Ambulance Services Assistant Director. He's also seen fewer volunteers, but is working with what he's got.
Our township has few taxpayers, not very many businesses, and not a lot of revenue coming in. So for us to have a full-time service on our own would be nearly impossible to pay.
Cook's volunteer emergency responders get paid $3 to $4 an hour when on call. Marengo pays $1 an hour. Both towns pay more when volunteers get sent out.
The reason why people are volunteering isn't for the money. You know, it's something that they feel that I need to help. I feel like I'm needed here. I'm part of this service.
Not doing it for the money, but in desperate need of more help. When they can't respond, the pager goes out to neighboring towns. A mutual aid agreement both Schultz and Blakeman's teams use. Thanks to mutual aid agreements, someone will eventually come, but that increases the wait time. EMS total call times in rural parts of the country are nearly 30% higher than in urban areas. Some contributing factors: more ground to cover and fewer available people.
I think the biggest thing about rural EMS and what needs to happen is that something needs to happen.
Mark Jones, Executive Director of Minnesota Rural Health Association, says the pandemic sped up healthcare worker retirements during a time when the need is also trending up.
Our rural communities are getting older. The demand on our rural ambulance services will continue to increase as those 65 and over population continues to grow.
Jones says some communities have embraced the volunteer method for too long, but in order for change to happen, it needs to be addressed on the local level.
Maybe the development of a strong EMS system starts locally. And locally, we identify what level of service we desire, what is needed in our community, and then what that costs and what we as taxpayers are willing to support.
When you call 911, you expect someone to come. Now, those who normally answer the call are asking for someone to come to their rescue because going without service isn't an option.
These are our people in this township. I think it's up to us to help serve them. That's what we do.
Next, we invaded the Russell Islands in 1943.
Joe Westerberg has always been a history buff, especially when it comes to World War II.
Okay, we got to find this for Westerberg in LSM 392. Okay, well, where is that now?
A passion instilled in him at an early age by his father, Alan, who was a signalman in the U.S. Navy during the war.
Growing up, it was always, oh, my grandpa fought in World War II, and I'd raise my hand in class and be like, my dad did. You're kidding. No, he was in the Pacific Theater on LSM 392.
At the time of the war, Alan was around 19 years old from the small town of Dassel, Minnesota. He loved exploring and catching insects overseas to send home for his collection. He also sent letters to his family, sharing details and stories of his 2.5 years of service.
When Dad said, well, I have all my letters home. You have all your letters home?
In total, the Westerberg family saved almost 1,000 of Alan's letters from war, now serving as a first-hand account of history.
So some could be 10 pages long, some are a couple pages, some are censored, some aren't. Yeah, it's fascinating to see him go to boot camp, all the adventures he took.
Joe found out about his father's letters about 20 years ago. Since then, it's been his mission to transcribe and eventually publish them for his family and for future generations to see how life was during the Second World War.
You look up history and it's first-hand accounts. That's where you learn more. My dad wasn't actively involved in any major battles, but to me, he's still a hero.
For most of Joe's life, this had been a project he shared alongside his father. But Alan never got the chance to see the book complete before he died in 2019.
But he instilled the love of history for me, and it's just, I wish he were around. I'd have a ton of questions.
And in 2020, when COVID's quarantine hit, it was the perfect time to get it done.
A pair of nylon stockings to every teacher who accepts a contract to teach in their schools. Hey, in 45, that's a big thing. There were just days I was just flying through letters, and I'd yell to my wife, "Oh my God, Dad's doing this," you know, and it was just kind of a fascinating process, but nothing else to do during COVID, so I just kept plugging away.
Joe says even though they were stuck at home, they were living vicariously through his dad's adventures.
VJ Day, which is September 2nd, 1945, when they signed the surrender documents in Tokyo Bay. His ship and the rest of the ships in his convoy got to fire off flares and guns and everything, make noise and light the sky up. I have his 3 flares that he shot off. And so I know where they were shot, when they were shot, who shot them, and why they shot them.
And after 21 years and countless hours, the book is now ready for publication. Joe hoping it brings others as close to his father as he now feels.
But it's just a project that I've loved, and I'm just glad it's nearing the end, but it's a way to honor my dad. That's tradition, you know.